Hello, and welcome to the next episode of this Rainfall podcast. Today we're talking about another of the races, the Lessers. So, before we get into talking about Lessers, we have to talk about creatures known as Outsiders. So, in the Rainfall setting, there's more than one reality. And someone who wants to pass between realities they have to sort of pass through a void. And when they do this, they arrive in this new reality, and they arrive with no memory. All of their memory is completely wiped away. And outsiders are creatures from another reality who have come to our reality. Now, they come in generally four types. And these four types are celestials, demons, dragons, and fae. And each of these creatures have their own cultures and their own abilities and things like that. But the outsiders are not what we're focusing on in this episode. What we're talking about are lessers. And lessers are the sort of larval child form of outsiders. Lessers will eventually grow up to be outsiders, though this process takes a long time, and so far none of the Lessers who have arrived in Rainfall from their reality have ever undergone this process completely and become full-fledged outsiders. So, what do Lessers look like? Well, in general, they look like humanoid kind of creatures. Their appearance is very thin and skeletal, and one of their major defining features comes from their face. And so, from about the top of their nose, the bridge of their nose, up to their forehead, that area of their face is completely empty. Instead, all they have there is a hole, a big cavity that allows them to sort of see into their skull. There's a big cavity in their face. And this cavity, what it's filled with, varies depending on what type of lesser they are. So for celestial lessers, this is occupied by a big sphere of glowing light. For fiendish or demonic lessers, this is occupied by a ever-burning fire. For dragons, this is an empty space. The outsides around the edge of this hole are covered in scales. And finally, for fae, this cavity is filled with living plant growth of some kind. Now, they have more than just that feature. The rest of their face is very skeletal in appearance, very thin, as if someone just barely stretched skin over a skull. And the rest of their body is also very thin and skeletal looking. Now, they also all bear wings on their back. Now, these wings are sort of vestigial. They don't have the strength yet as lessers to be able to fly with them, whereas in their full-fledged outsider forms, these will allow them to fly. At the moment, in this part of their life cycle, they can't, so they're sort of mostly just underdeveloped. And, of course, they match along with what type of outsider they pertain to. Dragons have more leathery kind of wings. Demons have more of bat-like wings. Celestials have more angelic-looking wings, and fae have kind of fairy insect-looking wings. So that's generally their appearance. Now, what about their culture? So, because they're outsiders, appearing in our reality, they appear with no memory, no knowledge of their home or their culture or anything like that. So they appear kind of as a blank slate. Some of them get picked up by outsiders of their own kind who come through and sort of assimilate them into their culture, but the vast majority of them sort of just end up wandering around the land, and they form into these small communes that are located all over, and just sort of groups of like-minded lessers who have come together and just settle in one place. And each one of them sort of make their own little cultures, and they're very insular groups. They accept, whatever lesser may come by, and in general just try to stay away from the rest of the world and people who might attack them or harbor grudges against their outsider kind for the various different things that these creatures may have done. So these communes are led by a patriarch or matriarch, and in general that's the most experienced person in that commune, and they sort of serve as the general guide for the rest of the people in the commune, not necessarily having any true leadership role, but sort of serving as like a mentor to the rest of the people in the commune. And there's also a group within each commune called the chroniclers, and they are tasked with going out of the commune to find newly arrived lessers who have arrived from their reality into ours, finding them and bringing them back to the commune. And so these chroniclers are found wandering all over the land, searching for their newly arrived brethren. So, what about religious beliefs among them? Well, as they arrive with no memories and nothing like that, none of their own culture, most of them simply adopt the religious beliefs of whoever they tend to settle near or around, or that is most prevalent within their own commune. And so, for example, a lesser commune that is in the Riemann Republic of the forebears we talked about last time, they might worship that same pantheon that they worship. A small segment of these lessers do view the outsiders as sort of ascended beings, something to live up, an ideal to live up to, and something to aspire to be like, but these are usually considered to be extremists among their own people. Most lessers don't really subscribe to that point of view. And in general, lessers kind of just keep to themselves. They want to stay within their own communities and build up, themselves. And they also, many of them try to distance themselves from the rest of the outsiders, because outsiders are seen as, dangerous and unpredictable, and these giant, powerful beings. And so lessers tend to try and avoid that legacy and find a place for themselves. So that's about all I have to talk about for today. For next time, going to take a bit of a break from races, and we're going to be talking about the creatures that ended the world. So that's all for this time. If you liked it, please subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. And I will see you next time.